A large portion of the Jewish nation has returned to its homeland, but the heart, soul, and mind of much of the Jewish nation are still in exile mode. This state of affairs must and will inevitably change. This is Torah Nation TV from Jerusalem, and we are speaking with the head of Machon Shilo, Rabbi David Bar-Hayim. Shalom, Rabbi Bar-Hayim.
Shalom.
The Babylonian Talmud relates that Rabbi Zerah, upon making Aliyah to Eretz Israel from Babylon, fasted 100 times in order to forget the Torah of Babylon. How are we to understand this surprising fact?
It is true that the Talmud Bavli in Bava Metzia, Daf Pei He, 85a, relates that Rabbi Zerah, who was originally from Bavel, Babylon, and studied there under some of the greatest Torah sages in Bavel at that time, such as Rav Yehuda, he came on Aliyah to Eretz Israel. And upon so doing, the Talmud relates, he decided to fast 100 one-day fasts, not consecutive of course, in order to forget, this is the precise language of the Talmud, in order to forget the Talmud of Bavel. The first thing we have to understand is that the word Talmud in this context does not mean the book, the text known as the Talmud today. At that period of time there was no such text, there was no such written text known as the Talmud. In fact, the word Talmud means learning, or study, or in-depth learning, investigation of a subject. When one studies a topic, an idea, a miswah, a concept in the Torah in depth and compares the different sources and tries to get to the bottom of the matter and fully understand the matter at hand and the halakha, how one should behave, how one should perform this precept of the Torah, that is called Talmud. So Rashi explains and so Rambam explains. That is the meaning of the word Talmud. What we have today, the books known as the Talmud, are the records of those discussions amongst the sages, amongst Chazal, during the period following the generations following the time of the Mishnah. Those discussions, both in Eretz Yisrael and in Bavel, were recorded, and that is the Talmud that we have today. In other words, that is a written record of those discussions. But in the time of Rabbi Zerah, there was no such written record. So therefore, when it says that Rabbi Zerah wished to forget, Lishtaka Talmudah Bavla'ah, to forget the Talmud of Bavel, it's not referring to a given book that he had studied that he wished now to forget. What he was trying to do was forget the way, the approach to Torah study, the form of discussion and investigation of Torah that he had been taught, that he had absorbed in Bavel, in his home country. When he came to Eretz Yisrael, he saw that Torah here was learned in a different way, in a different matter. This difference, Rashi explains, refers to the fact that in Bavel, the study of Torah was very long-winded. That is to say, there were many questions were asked and many responses, kushiot and terutzim, questions and answers, backwards and forwards, so that the discussion became very long and arduous. Whereas in Eretz Yisrael, when he came to study under Rabbi Yohanan, who was the head of the generation at that time, here in Eretz Yisrael, when he came to the yeshiva of Rabbi Yohanan in Tiberia, he saw that Torah was learnt in a different manner. The discussions were more focused, and fewer questions and answers were required to arrive at the truth. And once that truth had been arrived at, once the matter had been fully explicated, that was the end of the discussion, and there was no need and no desire on the part of the sages in Eretz Yisrael to belabor the point or to turn the a short and successful discussion into a long and successful discussion. This is one of the differences between the approach to Torah study in Bavel as opposed to Eretz Yisrael. The question is, what underlies this difference of approach? To me, it seems that the answer is to be found in the essence and the nature of Galut Judaism. Originally, the Jewish people lived in their land, and it was their purpose, as described by the Torah, to be a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, to be a holy nation, to establish a nation and a culture, a society, based on the principles and the values of the Torah. And that, of course, is a very great and very wonderful task, a majestic and glorious task to which the Jewish people are commanded to dedicate themselves. And the inspiration and the instruction in order to be able to succeed in that task is to be found in the Torah. In other words, the purpose of the Torah in such a situation is to instruct. The word Torah, in fact, means exactly that in Hebrew, instruction. Lahoroth is to teach, to instruct. Torah means instruction, teaching. The Torah is there to teach us, to direct us, and lead the way, point us in the right direction, so that we will know how to create that kind of Jewish society, Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael based on the principles of the Torah, both in our individual lives, in the home, and in our public life as a nation, as a society. But when the Jewish people go into Galuth, into exile, that is no longer the case. That is no longer the focus of the Jewish people. In exile, in Galuth, a Jew is essentially by himself. He is alone, or he's a member of a community of Jews, which is really a collection of individuals, but there's no nation. There's no longer a sense of nationhood, and there is no national purpose. The real focus of Galut Judaism is simply survival. To survive as a Jew, not to assimilate, not to be influenced by the nations, by the foreign cultures and ideas that surround us in the reality of Galuth, or to be influenced as little as possible, and to continue to live a Torah lifestyle and to transmit that Torah lifestyle to future generations. In that reality, the greatest tool that the Jewish people possess in order to achieve this overriding goal and aim of Jewish survival is Torah study itself. And not only because the Torah teaches us and instructs us how we are to live our lives as Jews, but because the very fact of dealing with Torah issues, discussing the Torah at length, being involved in these discussions, that itself is part of our defense mechanism in the Galut against foreign ideas and being connected to the Gentile society that surrounds a Jew in a reality of Galuth. In that kind of situation, the more Torah study that goes on, that is to say, the more involved, the more lengthy, the more time-consuming the study of Torah is, and the more people involved in the study of Torah, the greater the benefit that accrues to the Jewish community and the Jewish individual in the Galut. I once heard a shiur given by a certain Rav. He was discussing the period of the Haskalah, the Enlightenment, in Eastern Europe in the 19th century. And he said that the Torah sages of those generations discovered, and they saw that the best antidote to the desire and the trend towards secularization and becoming more involved in Gentile society in Eastern Europe, the best antidote, the best medicine for this disease was the study of Talmud, in-depth study of Talmud, and dafka, the study of Talmud, not any other part of the Torah, but precisely the study of Talmud that we see in many yeshivot today. Because, this rabbi explained, one becomes totally immersed, as it were, in a world, in a reality, in a kind of virtual reality, which is really a reality unto itself, cut off from the real world. And that, it must be admitted, is the purpose, is the aim of Torah study as it developed, at least in the minds of many people, as it developed in the Galut, particularly in Eastern Europe. The aim of Torah study was to create a kind of virtual reality, a bubble in which a Jew would exist, and he would busy himself with discussions which are essentially, by definition, by nature, endless and infinite, discussions of different points in Jewish law and Talmudic discussions, and this reality would entirely encase and encompass the Jew's life and protect him from any kind of interaction with the world around him. And therefore, in that kind of reality, the more kushiot, the more questions that are asked, and therefore the more answers that are required, the more terutzim are required, the more books that are written, the more people discussing these questions and answers ad infinitum, the greater the defense mechanism, the greater the benefit. And therefore, in that reality, Torah becomes no longer the means to an end. In other words, the teachings of the Torah are no longer the means to achieving the purpose, the aim of the Jewish people, which is to be a Jewish nation living according to the Torah in their land. The study of Torah now becomes the end. It is a purpose, it is an end in and of itself. The more Torah study that exists in a Galut atmosphere, the greater the Jewish community, the more certain they can feel that they can remain separate and apart and different from the nations around them, whereas the true purpose of the Jewish people is in fact not on the radar screen at all. The purpose, the aim now is simply to survive, and the Torah becomes both the means and the end for that survival. And I believe that Rabbi Zera, when he came to Eretz Yisrael, recognized this fact, that in Eretz Yisrael we wish to understand the Torah, understand the truth, and achieve a correct understanding of whatever aspect of the Torah is that we're studying at any given moment, in order to actualize it in the real world, in order to act upon it and to live according to that truth. Whereas in Bavel, beyond that original purpose of Torah study, he began to see that much of the pilpul, much of the discussion, much of the intellectual gymnastics that had become part and parcel of the Babylonian approach to Torah study was really an unnecessary encumbrance and something superfluous, and in fact a distraction from a true and correct understanding of Torah and implementation of that Torah in the real world. So the difference between the Talmud, the study, the approach to Torah study in the Galuth, as opposed to Eretz Yisrael, is the difference between seeing the Torah as our instruction manual, as it were, for living a Jewish life and directing the Jewish nation in its effort to live up to its destiny of being a Mamlechet Kohanim, a holy nation, as opposed to the Torah becoming a kind of defensive suit of armor, as it were, in order to simply survive and deflect foreign influences. So the Torah becomes, rather than an instruction manual, it becomes an end unto itself. And I believe that precisely this attitude we see today in the current discussion here in Israel regarding the question of army service, whether there should be a general exemption from army service, from military service, for anyone who says he wishes to study Torah. According to the approach of the Galut, of Bavel, the approach that Rabbi Zera wished to leave behind, according to that approach, every individual who says he wants to study Torah and wants to sit in yeshiva should be encouraged and should be allowed to do so. And it is very wrong and very detrimental to the Jewish people, according to this approach, seeing that the Torah is the defense mechanism, seeing that the Torah is the end unto itself, and we are, the Jewish people, as it were, are simply the means to achieve that end. The Torah has to be studied, and we are the people who have to study it. The world exists, as it were, for the study of Torah, rather than the Torah existing for the Jewish people to know how to live in this world. That is the difference that I think Rabbi Zera appreciated, and therefore he wished to leave behind the Galut version and adopt the new and more authentic form of Torah study and Torah existence that he found in Eretz Yisrael.
Thank you, Rabbi Bar-Hayim. We would like to suggest the following opportunity to our viewers. If you identify with Rabbi Bar-Hayim's message and would like to sponsor or dedicate a video interview with the Rabbi in honor or memory of a loved one, if you would like to obtain Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the Rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.